Here are 7 key things to consider if you're thinking of selling your investment properties. The first question you need to ask yourself, is selling actually the right option for me? So here's the thing, I've had so many meetings with so many landlords over the last couple of years who have come to me considering selling their properties. And I always ask this question to begin with, and some of the reasons that they give me are actually around headache from managing maintenance, headache from having tenants call them late at night, headache because they're not getting enough money from their investments. Well, I'd have you consider that actually there might be management options. Maybe the rents are very low, and if the rents were increased, they'd actually be performing better and bringing in the income that the landlord's looking for, and it might be a viable option to keep. So I think before you do this, it's really, really key that you ask yourself that question. Are you selling for the right reasons? What would you do with the money? Have you got a plan of action with it? Or are you just selling because, quite frankly, you've had enough of managing them? Well, there may be a better option. It may be to look at a management option instead of selling. But if the answer is still, I want to sell, these next 2 points you need to consider, there's different approaches that you can take. Point number 2 is selling on the open market. What do you need to consider if you're selling your investment properties on the open market? Well, you're going to have to engage with estate agents. You're going to have to let the tenant know you're selling. You're probably going to have to sell it to a buyer that wants a home to live in. So there's a chance that you're going to have to evict your tenant or serve them notice. It might be a little bit tricky. There's also a risk that once your tenant leaves, because they've got to leave before a sale goes through, that the sale could fall through and you could end up with an empty property. You could lose income, you could lose rent. It could get a little bit messy. It could get a little bit tiresome. So the open market approach may not be the right option, but depends on what kind of property you've got. It may well be the best option for you. If you've got something that would achieve a lot more money on the open market than it would sell into another buy-to-let investor, then actually that extra headache is going to be worth enduring to make sure that you get the right result when exiting. If, however, the property is an ideal buy-to-let investment, then point number 3, you might want to consider a totally different approach, which I would call an off-market approach. Now, this is something that I've been doing for the last couple of years, and it's been very, very successful because when you're selling an investment property with a tenant in situ to another investment buyer who's looking for a buy-to-let, everything is a lot easier. You don't have to get your tenant out. You don't have to put the property on the open market and bombard them with viewings. You get your rent up until the point of completion, and effectively the new buyer will inherit the current tenancy, take it with the tenant in situ, and then obviously continue to manage that tenancy once they're in ownership. So in theory, in essence, it's a much easier exit for you. And if the sale goes wrong and it falls through and something happens, you haven't lost your tenant, you haven't lost your income, and you can go back to the drawing board. So it's a much easier way of doing things, a little bit more discreet. It's better for the tenant, it's in theory better for you. So I think that's something that you should consider if your property is actually ideal to be passed on to another investor. So moving on, that leads us nicely into my 4th point, and that's if you are going to sell off market, you've got to consider the tenant. Now, before you start offering it out to investors, before you start attracting that sort of attention, you need to go and have a proper conversation with your tenant. You need to reassure them. I find that one of the biggest battles at the beginning is as soon as you say to your tenant, I'm thinking of selling this property, they panic because they don't want to move. They're probably comfortable. They might have children. They've got a life there. That's their home. So it's really, really important that you don't go too quickly. Go and speak to them first. You make the effort and you reassure them that, look, here's my plan. Here's what we're going to do. And we're only offering it to a new landlord. My plan is to sell it with you as the tenant. I just need a bit of cooperation with you, and I really hope that we can all get the right result here. You've just got to be reassuring, and I just find that it's the way to start at the beginning, and just involve your tenant every step of the way. Keep them informed and keep them updated of progress. It will be a much easier process. They will want to help you if they can see that you're trying to help them. Point number 5 is consider tenancy compliance. Now, this is really important. I've had a lot of landlords try to sell their properties that I've helped who have been managing for a long time and actually have missed parts of compliance. They haven't got complete files, their paperwork's a bit out of date, they haven't got right to rent, or they haven't registered a deposit, or one of their certificates is expired, or they haven't issued things at the beginning of the tenancy that they should have. So all of these boxes need to be ticked. So before you sell this property, if you're going to sell to an investor, I would fully recommend doing a compliance audit and making sure that your compliance is absolutely up to scratch and in place, because it's actually going to be a condition of the buyer's buy-to-let mortgage that if they're taking over a tenant in situ, it has to be a compliant tenancy. It's going to be asked for by their solicitor during the conveyancing. They're going to want to make sure the complete file's in check, and they will be advised to ensure that that's in check before exchange of contracts. So if you do all of that legwork at the beginning, it will be ready for a buyer to come and make a nice swift sale, but also it'll be a more attractive proposition to a buyer if the tenancy compliance is all up to scratch and in place. The next thing to consider is, does the property need any work, and is it a level of work that actually is worth you doing before selling the property to another investor? So if you've had this property for a long time, the tenant's lived in there for a long time, it's not uncommon that it might be a bit tired, it might be in need of a bit of a refurbishment. It could put buyers off, and sometimes buyers would opt to have it vacant possession so they can go in and, you know, do a refurb before reletting it in the future? Is there anything that needs to be done to the property? Some outstanding maintenance, something that's really tired that actually wouldn't be too expensive or too hard to fix, that would make it again a more attractive proposition and would likely attract better offers for investors, because what they want is a nice, easy, here's a purchase, already tenanted, good rent, good compliance, good condition. I don't have to do anything other than invest the money and buy it, and then I can move on to the next one. So is your property in good enough condition to attract the right kind of offers from the right kind of investors? And finally, my 7th point is the current level of rent. I know as a landlord that when you've had a tenant in a property for such a long time, it's so easy to just leave the level of rent where it is because you're happy with the tenant, you've got a good relationship with them, and you could fall hundreds of pounds a month behind what the current rental value is. Now, when you exit, you've got to appreciate that a new investor, a new buy-to-let investor, is going to want the right returns from their investment. The mortgage rates are higher than they've been for a long time. There's financial challenges now to investing in property. So it's really important that the level of rent is as close to the market value as possible. If your rent is low, you will attract lower offers from investors, but also if they're getting a buy-to-let mortgage, it's going to affect their lending criteria. It's actually going to affect the affordability of that mortgage. And again, it's going to entice even lower offers on your property. So my advice to you, if you're in a position to review your rents and get them closer to market value before you offer it to an investor, please do so, because that's going to make it a much more attractive proposition and going to get you better offers when you try to offload your investment property to a new buy-to-let investor. So landlords, if you're thinking of selling, those are my 7 top tips for things you need to consider before offloading your investment properties. I really hope you found this useful. If you did, drop us a like and subscribe to my channel, and I hope to see you on the next video.